Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Thursday, the 5th of December. My name's Councillor Kate Revilius and I'm Executive Member for Transport. Welcome to my decision session. So today, first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Michael.
Yes, just like to give apologies for James Gilchrist. I'll be deputising for him today, Michael Howard.
Thank you. Okay, and declarations of interest. I have no declarations of interest on the agenda, so and minutes from the last meeting, I will sign. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that gets us to the public participation, and we have a number of speakers today. I'll just call everyone up in turn. You each have 3 minutes. If you'd like me to give you a 30-second warning, I'm happy to do so before the end. And we've got one person who's speaking remotely who I'll call at the end of the public speakers. So our first public speaker is Councillor Waller, who's speaking on item number 6, the number 16 bus route.
I am now.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go when you're ready.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Revilius. I'm grateful to Lincoln Court Residents Association for conducting the petition, which I was happy to present on behalf of those residents and others in the area affected by the changes to the route or in September, as the timing of full council meeting meant that there'd been little time to get this together. This bus serves many neighbourhoods for which it is the only bus which goes along those roads, and together with the demise of Dial and Ride means that it is a lifeline for residents to get to appointments, shops and social meetings in Front Street or getting to the city centre. The change in September from the 24 to 16 has meant a route that has been difficult to keep to timetable. Indeed, being around the ward yesterday, I noted there were times when the bus had been impacted by traffic, meaning that it was running significantly late. And there have been times recently where the driver's hours have meant that there's been early termination of the service. At the inception, there were times when a bus was simply taken out, which when it's just an hourly service meant that some people had to wait 2 hours. As the bus happens to go past my house, I was able to verify the disruption to the service by watching it go past from my desk. I could see how few passengers were using it once confidence in the service had been lost. This was terrible. If people don't use it, the danger is it's completely axed. I was in regular correspondence with the management of Connections bus company running the service, and they were equally frustrated by this situation. I was grateful for the opportunity to talk to officers in advance of this report to convey the concerns and views of residents reliant on this service. The option to move to a 70-minute timetable is not at all popular. Whilst passenger numbers have come back, in order to have a viable service, we need a reliable service that is easily understood by passengers with a clock-faced timetable. Many passengers have commented on the current size of the vehicle, as there is significant need for space for mobility aids, such as walkers, wheelchairs, together with buggies for children. This has meant a very tight squeeze on the small vehicle, and there have been instances where passengers have fallen. I was grateful for the opportunity to move the discussion with officers onto looking at the pinch points, which make the operation of the previous single-decker bus difficult due to overrunning verges. I would strongly recommend the application of this mapping process utilising bus funding, as well as the council operating in a corporate body sense with the estate improvement funds from housing to tackle key points, which will benefit not only the bus, but also bin lorries and delivery vehicles, which are a regular feature of life in our neighbourhoods. I hope that there will be considerable consultation in the run-up to the tendering process for the new service from April 25. As the chair of Lincoln Court Residents Association Gordon, Campbell, Thomas and myself are happy to work with officers on this consultation. On behalf of passengers, we need to get this right to ensure a viable public transport network. Thank you, Councillor Villiers.
Thank you, and I really value that local perspective, and thank you for engaging on that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to slightly change the ordering of public speakers just because Councillor Merritt, who's online, is now online. So we're going to listen to him and then come back to the room. So Councillor Merritt, are you there and ready to speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. So
Right.
just go when you're ready. Do you want me to give you a 30-second?
I'm not going to take the full 3 minutes.
Okay.
I basically wanted to strongly support the proposed trial in Gillygate. Air quality in Gillygate is still over the legal limits. A decade after the limits came into force, and it's really grossly unsatisfactory and a real health risk for local residents there. So really pleased to see the flexibility that's being offered by the council to allow this trial to take place, and obviously to also welcome the support that has been given by the local air quality group of residents and businesses to help make that happen. Ditto the help from the Civic Trust, so that this is a genuine cooperative effort to ensure that this trial could take place. What I particularly wanted to, and specifically wanted to ask, is I know that there's diffusion tube locations on a number of the local streets, but what I wanted was an assurance that there are diffusion tubes indicative of the residential properties that are on Clarence Street or on Lord Mayor's Walk or in Gillygate, and the immediate junctions beyond, because a lot of these properties are on street, directly on street, so they're particularly sensitive obviously to local pollution levels. So it's basically to have an assurance that there will be a double checking to ensure all the most likely impacted residential properties that we actually have diffusion tubes in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merritt. I haven't got any of our air quality team here today, but I'm certainly happy to talk to them about the location of the diffusion tubes and see if that request is a possibility. So thanks for raising that. Okay. Right, okay, we'll go back to the list of public speakers that I have here. So I'd like to invite Peter Rodham up next, who's here to talk about agenda item 6, the number 16 bus. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning before the 3 minutes finishes? Oh, press the button that says mic underneath it.
That's fine. Right, I'm here to represent the passengers and the bus drivers. I use the bus number 16 bus very regular. The new timetable hasn't worked, we know that. I agree completely with the gentleman before me, with the exception of a 70-minute timetable not available. Most of the timetables are very flexible, they'll go up and down. If you know a bus is going to come on time with a 70-minute timetable, then that's great. Even if it's 5 minutes late, that's also great. But unfortunately, it hasn't been right. I've done studies every day, like this gentleman behind me. They come past my house, and until the timetable was changed, I now can't use most of the buses, which is a big shame. And this is what's happened with most of the regulars. And this is my big fear. There's some very good alternatives put in. I quite like the idea of the extended part on Ascot Way, which helps them. I quite like the idea of 8:44 start. That seems to work quite well. And that should work. but then you lose out by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where they start getting longer and longer. That's all, thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm interested to hear what you say, and I'll certainly take that into consideration when we're thinking about this. It is an ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to invite Councillor Melly up to speak next, who's speaking on item number 8, the Gillygate trial.
Morning.
Ready?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I'm here to support the recommendations in agenda item 8 to implement a trial on Gillygate to gate the traffic differently from the way it's gated currently. We've all witnessed the persistent congestion and queuing of vehicles on Gillygate. It's not an easy road to travel along by any mode, be it cycling, walking, bus or car. Gillygate has the worst air quality of any road in York, which is caused largely by this congestion. The air pollution is causing respiratory problems for residents and other health problems, and it's completely unacceptable. This trial should hopefully improve the air quality, help us to have a better understanding of the causes of poor air quality on Gillygate, give us a better understanding of how to tackle it, and provide insights into how to manage traffic flows in other parts of the city as well as improving the area for everyone who uses it. As Guildhall ward councillors, addressing the poor air quality on Gillygate has been a priority for us since we were elected last year. We really appreciate the time that officers and executive members have given to local residents and the ward councillors to work with us constructively to find solutions to this problem. Again, I'd like to thank council officers, the Civic Trust, executive members, and most of all local residents and business owners for all the work they've put into this project to get it to the point we're at now, where we're ready to get started on this trial. After this decision session, I'll be joining residents on site on Gillygate to support them in their programme of data collection to be used to support this trial. So please decide to go ahead with a year-long trial starting next month. It can't be put off. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, really good to hear that perspective. Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Councillor Fenton, who's also here to speak on item number 8, the Gillygate trial.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ivilius, for the opportunity to speak. I think it's worth setting out some of the context to this decision. The Council, in its recently adopted local transport strategy, committed to critically assess the future role of what is now the Inner Ring Road. It commits to consider further action in locations where traffic emissions are a significant contributor to poor air quality, and to look at where movement and place are most seriously in conflict, and design schemes to take early action which are consistent with the movement and place plan. The implementation plan, which followed on the strategy, commits to progress a study looking at the options for altering traffic movements on the western side of York's Inner Ring Road, focusing on the Gillygate area, with a particular focus on addressing poor air quality in this area. So, mindful of what is set out in the strategy and in the implementation plan, I suppose the first question the report prompts is why these measures are being brought forward now, rather than when the movement and place plan is in existence. And I think the report perhaps doesn't go into enough detail as to some of the issues that have prompted measures to be proposed before the plan is in place. The study referred to in the implementation plan to look at options for altering traffic movement is welcome. And option 2 seems to best fit with this ambition in terms of delivering a comprehensive trial which would provide valuable data on queue lengths, pedestrian or cycling impacts, behavioural changes from drivers, and impacts on the reliability of public transport. Option 2 is estimated to cost £100,000. As we all know, we're about to set the council budget for next year, so I'm surprised that this investment doesn't seem to have been considered through that process. I'd also like to ask if the mayoral combined authority has been approached with a view to funding a comprehensive trial. I think the findings of a trial could have real value, not just in York, but in towns across the region, which face similar challenges, such as Knaresborough, Malton and other places. If the funding can be identified from either City of York Council or the combined authority, would it not be possible for a comprehensive trial to get underway in the first half of 2025? Another question that the report prompts relates to the scope of the trial in relation to emission sources that contribute to poor air quality. I understand that the 2-week trial on Gillygate that took place last year did show a decrease in nitrogen dioxide levels, and this proposed trial is looking at particulate matter as well. However, as the report notes, 85% of PM2.5 on Gillygate comes from background sources such as heating. So it begs the question, has consideration been given to addressing non-vehicle sources of pollution, either within or alongside the proposed suite of trial measures? So to conclude, I would ask the executive member to consider how the trial can be undertaken in a way that will provide valuable learning for other interventions going forward, as envisaged in the local transport strategy, which to my mind at least would suggest that option 2 is favoured. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for raising those questions. I'll do my best to answer them during the decision session. But if there's anything I don't manage to answer, please do feel free to follow up, and I will get back to you with answers on those. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is John Gannon, who is here to talk about item number 8, the Gillygate air quality trial. Would you like me to give you a 30-second warning before the end, or are you happy?
Yes, please.
You would do, okay.
Good morning,
right.
everyone.
Just go when you're ready.
Councillor Ravilius. I'm a resident of Gillygate, a long-term resident, and also a member of the Gillygate Air Quality Action Group, Love Guildhall, which has been in existence now for a little over 2 years. I last spoke to the council about 14 months ago on this same subject. Gillygate's the most polluted street in York for nitrogen dioxide emissions. In the 2023 Air Quality Status Report, diffusion tubes 7, 13 and 14 recorded annual mean values of 49.5, 45.5 and 47.3 micrograms per metre cubed for the year 2022. Values for year 2023 are lower at 41.7, 39.8 and 39.9. So it appears the introduction of electric buses and low emission taxis appears to have had some positive impact on nitrogen dioxide pollution. But crucially, pollution levels are still too high and are not falling quickly enough. Love Guildhall encourages the council to proceed without delay with the traffic light gating trial, which we understand will start in January. And we hope that this will lead to an optimisation of traffic light phasing to reduce air pollution. I expect the effect will be modest, but I also recognise the importance of obtaining data to set the baseline against which future interventions can be measured. I also acknowledge and welcome that Gillygate is now specifically mentioned in the July 2024 local transport strategy, and I'll address that matter shortly. Firm and bold action by the implementation of movement and place plans for our street can, I believe, have a more significant impact. Our members are out on the streets today collecting data on traffic flows, and they will be there again on Saturday in order for the baseline to be established for current phasing of the traffic signals. The group's keen to help the council and York Civic Trust to achieve a purposeful and economically efficient trial. I strongly urge the council to listen carefully to the advice and expertise of Professor Tony May, who will speak shortly, and group members remain available to assist the council and the Civic Trust in order to mitigate delays and defray costs. Quickly, a few sound bites from the local transport strategy for the next 16 years.
30 seconds.
Desire to be net zero by 2030 requires a 20% reduction in car use, a reduction in car dependency, the management of freight, etc., etc. Love Guildhall supports reducing vehicle use in our streets, putting the health of individuals above the ease of vehicle use. Difficult decisions which prioritise health will have our support. Finally, I note that Gillygate Air Quality Improvement Study is planned but not as yet funded. We urge the council to prioritise on this, as we need bold and effective action on the ground soon. And we do not expect that the gating trial itself will be sufficient. Reduction in traffic volume is absolutely essential for air pollution to be reduced. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say a big thanks to the support from the Gillygate Air Quality Action and the volunteering that you're doing. Thank you. Right, our final speaker is Tony May, who's here to speak on item 8, the Gillygate trial. Tony, do you want me to give you a 30-second warning?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Thanks.
Just start when you're ready.
As we've heard, Gillygate has for many years been the most polluted street in York, and pollution levels remain above government standards. It's absolutely right, therefore, that the council takes action. York Civic Trust strongly supports this extended trial of reduction of queues on the street, specifically to understand the impacts on pollution. We've been very happy to support the council and the local air quality action group in the development of the scheme and assessing its impacts. I just wanted to raise 3 points of concern. Firstly, option 1 proposes a collaborative approach to assessment, collaborative between the council and volunteers. This requires a clear governance arrangement for access to council data, for monitoring of CCTV images, and for joint preparation of the resulting report. Almost certainly traffic will settle down by late January, early February, so it should be possible to get early results in February, and those governance arrangements are therefore needed urgently. Secondly, and Councillor Fenton's already hinted at this, reducing queues is not the only solution. Air pollution will be best tackled by reducing traffic, as envisaged in the Council's 20% reduction target for traffic by 2030. The Council should not wait for the conclusion of this trial before developing its wider proposals for the better management of York's road network. The Council's movement and place plan now needs to be developed urgently and should set out clear ways in which traffic can be reduced on polluted streets. Finally, it does still appear that officers are somewhat suspicious about the council's commitment to managing traffic. The report cites the network management duty to achieve expeditious movement of traffic as though it is sacrosanct. Yet the Act makes clear that it is subject to achieving the council's other objectives. The council's local transport strategy already sets out its objectives for enhancing access, for reducing pollution, for reducing carbon emissions, for reducing casualties. The desire for free movement of traffic must be seen in that context. It is subject to achieving those objectives, and it would be really helpful if future reports from officers could make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for all those points and the support of the Civic Trust in developing this trial. And I'll definitely take those things into consideration. Thank you. So that's all of our public speakers for today. One thing I forgot to say at the start of the meeting is that item number 7 on the agenda, which is the proposed diversion of the public bridleway, has been deferred in order to have some continued discussions with the landowner and gather some further data. So that item's deferred. So we'll now move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is consideration of statutory consultation responses from the removal of Glen House from a residence parking zone. Darren, are you introducing that one? Yeah.
Good morning. This report has been brought forward following a planning application at Glen House, which was formerly a Suzuki garage on Glen Road. As part of that plan application, there's a requirement to remove the area from the residence parking so future residents couldn't be able to access permits. Sadly, the residents did move in prior to the developer being able to fulfil that requirement. So we've now undertaken a statutory consultation with residents and received 3 objections to the proposal as it restricted their ability to park in the area. The recommendation within the report is to go ahead with the initial proposal and remove it, but allow the current residents access to permits whilst they are in the process of changing. I said this is obviously to represent the views of the residents and also realise that this decision was not made with their knowledge. They were never made aware that they weren't going to be eligible for parking. So that's anything else.
Thank you. No, there's a really comprehensive piece of work. It's a very unfortunate situation that the developer failed to implement that condition, and that the residents were then in some ways misled because they made tenancy agreements without realising that they couldn't be part of the res park zone. However, the reason for imposing that planning condition in the first place was a sound reason. The zone is already oversubscribed. And our transport policy is very much that to reduce car dependency, encourage use of sustainable travel, and to recognise that the on-street parking is the bottom of our transport hierarchy, and there are many other ways in which streets can be used to create a better and healthier environment and encourage sustainable transport options. So taking that into recognition, we also need to understand that if we take no action here, then we risk other previously excluded areas requesting to have their planning condition removed as well. So there are multiple issues with doing nothing in this case. I note that this development has got 3 bus stops within 50 metres. It's close to the city centre, around a mile. It's got access to a car club around 1/3 of a mile away, and that there is some on-street parking available just outside of the res park zone from around 150 metres away. So I feel like there are many mitigations, and in addition, we have made the mitigation here that the residents who have currently purchased permits can continue till that permit expires or till the end of 2025, whichever is longer and whichever they need, so that they have time to make adjustments and make alternative arrangements. So I'm happy to go with the recommendation. I'm just going to look which page it's on. Let me see. So I'm happy to go with option 1, which is to approve making the order to remove the site from the residents' parking zone. Oh, sorry, not option 1.
No,
Option
sorry,
2.
option 2.
I'm happy to go with option 2. Sorry, misreading. To approve making the order to remove the site from the residents' parking R30 zone and allow existing permit holders to keep their permit until it expires, or to renew until the end of 2025 if needed, but not to renew beyond this date. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 6, which is the response to the bus service petition. Tom, are you introducing that one?
Morning, everyone, and thanks to the speakers on this item. So the 16, as Councillor Waller rightly says, it's an important service for many communities, and it's the only route that runs in certain areas, particularly the Hollybank Loop and Ascot Way areas. So it's an important service for us, and we acknowledge the petition that was submitted in September. So, well, during September, there were a significant number of operational issues for bus service as a result of the lane closure on the A64. So we saw particularly routes operating on or connecting into Tadcaster Road were suffering from significant reliability issues. So we recommenced monitoring off the back of the petition in October, and that monitoring ratified the concerns in the petition ultimately. Particularly there's issues around the first service of the day, and on Fridays we're seeing significant journey time variability. There are also some occasions when the number of passengers exceeds seating capacity. We've done on-bus monitoring to ratify that too. So in developing the solutions, there are a couple of key constraints that we're working to here. The service needs to be delivered through a one-bus operation for cost purposes, and it runs off the back of another route, so the start time's quite restricted. So taking that into account, and on the understanding that the service will be under new contract from April, and we're re-tendering, so we're essentially looking at a solution for 3 months with this report. We've developed 2 options. So one has a 70-minute timetable, and this really isn't desirable, as speakers have alluded to, from a customer understanding perspective and from a passenger convenience, but it will give the service more chance of running within the window of tolerance that the Traffic Commissioner requires. The preferred option and recommended options are 60-minute timetable. And we think this will be more effective because traffic conditions are typically lighter in the city during January, February, March. And then prior to the new contract commencing, we can work with the communities to sort of develop a further solution. And then we've also included a recommendation in there for you to undertake a route assessment and identify any other measures that would help potentially enable a standard single decker to run on the route and ease some of those seating capacity issues.
That's lovely, thank you. And I really appreciate the work that's gone into this to address the problem and the care that's been taken to look at different options. There's been a lot of challenge to bus services across the city in the last 4 months. The closure of the lane on the A64, as you mentioned, just disrupted everything massively. It showed how close our city is to capacity, that one small change results in gridlock across the city. And in that case, the western side of the city was very badly hit. So this service was very badly hit. So all of September was very bad. And then every year, the Christmas markets cause a lot of disruption. So it's given me a lot of pause for thought about the fact that, and Fridays we're recognising are always disrupted in the city. And so the implication of this very, very high level of traffic is that we're ending up padding out bus timetables to cope with periods of very high traffic. And then the rest of the year, the timetables are running with lots of padding. And this situation isn't ideal. So in the longer term, as our transport strategy says, the aim has to be to reduce the amount of traffic so that we're not running the city so close to capacity that everything is disrupted when one small thing happens. However, we have to take into account the here and now and see what we can do. And it was clear that this service was being severely impacted by various factors. It's not just the congestion. It was also that along some of the route, there are pinch points where there's regularly delays because of some blockage happening on the road. So there are two factors that are really causing a problem. It's unfortunate this particular timetable started in September, absolutely at the same time as those major disruptions across the city. So it's been hard to judge whether it was the timetabling that's at fault or whether the exceptional events in the city have really been the contributor. And we've not had very long to take any kind of clear background measurement as to whether this timetable functions or not. So I'm listening to the concerns from the community and the advice of the officers. I'm reluctant to do anything extreme just because we've been dealing with extreme disruption throughout the period of this timetable operating. And if we do something knee-jerk and large now, it may not be necessary to do something massive. So I think the option that's been drawn up where we have a revised timetable which gives some extra padding but keeps it on that clock face timetable that makes it easier for people to remember and know when the bus happens, but it crucially addresses the morning issues where the timings are more difficult because of traffic congestion in the morning, and also it addresses the timing of people getting on with free bus passes and all trying to catch the same bus, which is causing overcrowding. So it sort of splits the demand a bit there. So I think those are really sensible suggestions. And I also think it is really important that we look at those pinch points on the route and work to ensure that the bus isn't held up by deliveries or inconsiderate parking. So we look at some of those areas and put in small interventions. And certainly we have some funding to do that. So that's a very sensible option. So I'm very happy to go with option 1, which is to retain the existing hourly frequency, but retime to split the first journey that concessionary pass holders can access, as in the implications in C and D. And I think there was also the recommendation to do a route assessment and look at any potential small-scale measures to minimise the risk of obstructions. So I'm happy to go ahead with both of those interventions, and we will keep looking at this service and working to improve it, because we recognise the importance of it, and as both of our public speakers have said today, that this is really vital for those communities. So we've got to make it work, and we will continue to work with you. Right. Thank you. Okay, so not now. Sorry. Thank you. Right, I'm going to move on to agenda item 8, because as I said, agenda item 7 is deferred. So agenda item 8 is our Gillygate air quality trial. Michael, I'll allow you to introduce.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I'd just like to thank the speakers this morning from the Civic Trust and from the Gillygate Air Quality Group, who we've been working with in looking at this trial. So I'd just like to thank them for their input today, and obviously the work they've done with us over the last few months. This report considers 2 approaches to delivering a signal trial on Gillygate, with the aim to improve the air quality within the air quality management area. The trial will align with the local transport policy, which we adopted in July 2024. And some of the key things that we need to look at that drawing out of this is how much can we improve air quality in the Gillygate area through delivering the trial. There is a need to undertake air quality monitoring on an annual basis. So therefore, if we are to undertake a trial, the aim would be to commence that in January of 2025. The key outputs from that there obviously will relate to how much can we improve air quality, and that has been picked up by some of the speakers this morning, but also to assess what the overall impact will be of that. And the report looks at 2 approaches to delivering that and how we can actually undertake the assessment of the trial. Some of the key outputs that we need to look is how will the transfer of queues align to the strategy? So if we get a transfer of queues, what actually is the output of that? Will that offset the actual aim of improving the trial in Gillygate? So that's one of the things we need to check. We're not offsetting the problem to another location. We also need to assess whether we actually get a displacement of traffic. So it's very important in undertaking the trial that the monitoring looks at the wider area to ensure that we haven't had a displacement of traffic to other parts, and actually we've displaced the problem to other locations. So it's going to be very important that we do that. We have 2 aims, 2 approaches to this trial. One which looks at using volunteers to support undertaking that, and that is relatively low cost with a relatively low level of officer involvement. We don't actually have any resource or funding allocated to the trial at the moment. The other option is to take it forward with a more detailed monitoring and evaluation. I don't know if you want to pick up anything from there, Tom.
I'll just briefly to mention, so we've undertaken a bit of costing work to understand what it would take to deliver a more comprehensive trial across a year, and the ballpark sort of figure we're looking at to deliver the air quality monitoring, camera-based transport impact monitoring would cost in the order of 100,000, and that's not, as alluded to earlier by Councillor Fenton, that's not budgeted for currently.
Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate the work from officers here to pull together these options, and for all of our volunteer community and local councillors and the Civic Trust in terms of just working together to address this problem. So I want to be clear that this trial is primarily about improving air quality. Gillygate is the street that has the worst levels of air pollution in York. And what we're recognising is that it's a canyon-like environment where the street itself is narrow and fairly tall buildings, and the air becomes trapped in that street. And that's one of the reasons why it has the highest levels of air pollution. We can see from we have really great air quality monitoring across the city, and we can see that when we look at those annual measurements, air quality on Gillygate has been improving, and we can see that in the last year particularly there was an improvement, and that's likely partly to do with the move over to mostly electric buses. However, just having 1 year of improvement is not enough to give us confidence that that's a reliable and persistent trend and improvement. And what we can see when we look at the last 5 years is it hasn't really improved significantly. It's fairly just steady. So we're not seeing anything that gives us confidence that we've got the trend going in the right direction. As some of our public speakers have mentioned and the officers have said, the current air quality in Gillygate exceeds the national standards, and we have an obligation, that means, to address that air quality problem. It's not an option to do nothing and let it just carry on as it is. And the reason for that is it has really serious health impacts to have air quality that's poor. We know that in York, around 1 in 20 people are estimated to their deaths have air pollution contributes to those deaths. So that's 1 in 20 people. It's a far too high a number of people whose lives are impacted by poor air quality. And on top of that, there are many people who are living in poor health with respiratory conditions and cardiovascular conditions that are contributed to by that poor air quality. So there are many, many reasons to address air quality, and we are committed to do that in our air quality action plan, as well as looking at it from the transport perspective. So this trial is not the only way that we will look at addressing air quality. It is one way that we can see to start addressing the air quality problems on that street. In this case, it is a small change to the traffic signals that will reduce the amount of standing traffic on Gillygate significantly. The likelihood is that there will be some shift in the queuing to surrounding streets. However, those surrounding streets don't have that same canyon-like characteristic of the narrow street with the taller buildings. So we would anticipate that the air can be circulated more easily on those streets, and we wouldn't expect it to experience such severe air quality problems if we had standing traffic on the surrounding streets. However, as I note, Councillor Merritt in his public statement wanted to be confident that we are measuring the air quality on those surrounding streets and making sure that we are not just shifting the burden elsewhere. So it is important that we monitor that, and we have got that good quality monitoring network, and I'll certainly talk to our air quality officers about the locations of those monitoring tubes. The evidence from other areas when changes in traffic lights are imposed is that often there is a short-term disruption while everyone in the city gets used to that change. So yes, we might in the short term see some longer queues on certain streets, but the evidence would suggest from other areas that people adjust to that over time. It tends to be a short-lived disruption, and that drivers find alternative routes or find alternative modes of moving around. So we will be keeping an eye on that. But as one of our public speakers mentioned, it's really important that we sort of reevaluate the traffic a few months into the trial, and with luck and with following the evidence from other places, we would anticipate that those teething problems at the beginning will ease. So we will be keeping a close eye on that. If for some reason they don't, then we will be able to make adjustments to the trial to make sure that the impact is not detrimental to movement around the city. The trial does need to be for a year because there are many things that impact air quality. And on a day-to-day level, it goes up and down according to the weather, according to incidents that are happening a long, long way away from York. So the only way to really measure if the trend in air quality is changing is to look at it on that year-by-year basis. So we do need to have a year's measurement of the air quality measurements. The traffic measurements we can do on a shorter timescale. Now, I just wanted to check, there were some questions. Yes, so Councillor Fenton asked why to do this now rather than wait for the movement and place plan and the more significant type of interventions and a more doing a fuller modelling study. Well, the reason why now, as I alluded to at the beginning of what I was saying, is that doing nothing is not an option. We have an obligation to act. The air quality levels exceed the national standards, and we are not seeing a consistent downward trend. So we need to act now. And for the sake of residents' health across the city, not just on Gillygate, it's really important that we are acting to improve air quality. So that's the why now, and that doesn't mean this is the only thing we will do. There are many things within our transport plan and within the air quality action plan that we will be looking to introduce over time that will complement this and will further improve air quality. Councillor Fenton also asked me about the particulate measures. This trial is primarily aimed at improving decreasing the amount of nitrogen dioxide pollution, which we know the primary source from our source apportionment study, primary source is from vehicle traffic. So that is why we are fairly confident that reducing the amount of standing traffic on Gillygate will help to reduce the nitrogen dioxides. And that's the primary aim of this trial. Particulates have, as Councillor Fenton mentioned, have a more widespread source, and they can often be from heating, people's home heating. They can also be from external things, desert dust blowing in on the wind, moorland fires, all sorts of things. So it's a bit harder for us as a local authority to control those particulate measures. However, we are doing things within the Air Quality Action Plan, such as looking at expanding the smoke-free zone for York. That hasn't come into place yet, but it's something that's being considered. And within our transport strategy, one of the actions that we are looking at is whether we might be able to expand the clean air zone for buses to also include HGVs. So there are various things that we can do that will help to improve air quality in all aspects, and we will continue to look at those. The movement and place plan will be a crucial part of this as well, and we will be engaging consultants next year and looking at what kind of holistic measures across the city can be put into play that really reduce traffic, which is the only way we're going to properly get a grip on this problem. So there's lots in train, but this is a starting point, and it's an important starting point. And it will give us valuable data, not just on air quality, but also on how we can best control traffic across the city. So I think there are many good points that will come out of this. It will also hopefully bring improvements to Gillygate as a street in terms of making it a quieter place to live, to visit. It will encourage walking, cycling, hopefully bring increased business to the street and make it a more pleasant place to be. So it will be interesting to see some of those secondary benefits that might come out of this trial as well. I'm very appreciative of the support of the Gillygate Air Quality Action Group and the Civic Trust in helping to develop that trial, in raising these concerns and bringing them to us, and their willingness to work with us and support the trial as we go forward through the next year, which makes it all the more possible when we as a council are facing very, very tough budgetary decisions and having to do things in a economical way. So that support is greatly appreciated, and we're very, very grateful for that. So I think I've said everything I need to say. If there are any questions I forgot to answer from public speakers, do drop me a line afterwards and I will endeavour to follow up on those. So I am happy to go ahead on option 1, the recommended option, which is to undertake a trial of traffic signal gating on Gillygate for 12 months with air quality and basic transport impact monitoring. I do recognise that we haven't at the moment allocated officer resource and funding to this trial, and that will be for me to go away and work with officers on looking at our budget for next year and making sure that we do find that resource. But this is important, as I said, and it's something that we are committed to doing. So thank you, everyone. Okay. So that brings us to the end of the agenda for today. Is there any urgent business that anyone wants to raise? Okay, thank you, everyone. That brings the meeting to an end.